This method for braising beef produces a beautiful braised steak that you can cut with a butter knife and a lovely rich flavourful velvety gravy that gets poured on top. It uses simple ingredients and it's not too hard to do. Most of the work is done in the oven and it's just one of those meals that really embody homestyle goodness. And today I'm going to serve it with honeyed carrots, some boiled potatoes and some green peas. So first of all, you'll need to set your oven to a hot oven, so 200 degrees Celsius with a fan or 220 without a fan. So I have 1.4 kilos of chuck here, and anything between 1 kilo and 1.5 kilo will work. Now chuck is probably one of the best cuts of beef for braising. So I'm going to leave the steaks whole like this because I like serving pieces of them. And all I do is just season it lightly on both sides with some salt and pepper. And now what we want to do is brown the meat because this is the only opportunity to get some colour on it, and I like to brown it until it's really lovely and golden. So I just heat up a pan over a moderate heat on the stove, and when you fry the steaks you want to fry them in batches so they don't broil but brown instead. So just splash a little bit of oil, and lard works really well here. Cook them over a medium-high heat until they're lovely and brown on both sides. And that's the sort of colour you're looking for. Now to flavour the gravy, you just need the same weight of onions as carrots, and this onion here weighs about 200 grams, and so I just get basically the same weight in carrots. Sort of just chop them into a rough dice, not too big because we want them to sort of melt and go super tender. So now all I do is place the steak in a braising pan. And then to the hot pan on the stove, add the onions and the carrots and just cook them off until they're a little bit brown. So after a few minutes, just by frying the onion and the carrots, it's picked up all the fond from the bottom of the pan, and that's enough. So I just turn that off and put that on top of the steak in the braising pan. Mike bought this pan from Aldi's for me. It was like $40. It's really great. It's an enamel pan and it's perfect for braising, but if you don't have a braising pan, you can just use a baking dish and cover it with foil when it goes in the oven a bit later. The only thing with this Aldi's one is that they're very heavy. And now to this, sprinkle over 60 grams of plain flour. I'm just using gluten-free. But plain all-purpose flour, 60 grams, and just shape the pan a bit to combine. Now this goes in the hot oven for 10 minutes, and what this does is it browns the flour and takes that raw taste out of the flour. It also contributes to the really lovely body of the sauce, and it's basically like making a roux but letting the oven do the work in the pan. And you'll need 1 clove of garlic, just peeled and sort of smashed. So when the 10 minutes is up, remove the dish from the oven and reduce your oven temperature to 180 degrees with a fan or 200 without a fan. Put it back on the heat, just temporarily, and add just a tablespoon only of tomato paste and enough stock just to barely cover the meat. And that was 1.25 litres, which is 5 cups. And I just use stock powder, but you can use real stock or Tetra stock or just water and stock cubes, but you don't want the stock too strong. Now you can buy a bouquet garni from the supermarket, or you can just use some parsley stalks, just a few, a couple of sprigs of thyme and a bay leaf. And you can tie them together or you can fish them out later like I'm going to do. And then add your garlic clove, just one smashed garlic clove. And as soon as it comes to the boil and you see some bubbles, turn it off, put the lid on it and pop it in the oven, and I'll check on it in 90 minutes, 1.5 hours. So with the potatoes, these ones are quite small actually, I just pop them into a pot and all about the same size. If they're not the same size, just cut them in half or so they're about the same size. Then I just pour over some cold water, add a good teaspoon of salt and put them on the stove and gently bring them to the boil. I must make honeyed carrots at work at least 3 or 4 times a week, and they're really easy to do, and they're a cheap vegetable and they're nutritious and they're really delicious done this way. So all I do first of all is sort of just chop them into a thick julienne, not too thin. And you can use this way of honeying carrots with as little or as many carrots as you like. And then I just pop them into a saucepan, barely cover them with cold water and place them on the stove and bring them to the boil. And once the potatoes come to the boil, just keep it on a medium rolling sort of heat, so it's sort of rolling simmer, and slightly leave the lid ajar, and I'm just going to check on them in 10 minutes. My mother-in-law made me really fussy with boiled potatoes. She visited from Germany last year and she took so much care cooking potatoes. And when the carrots come to the boil, they can just boil away. I'll just reduce the heat a little bit, the rolling simmer until they're really tender. So when you can put a skewer with hardly any resistance at all through the potatoes and the carrots, then they're ready. And what I like to do with the potatoes is strain them and put them back over the stove and turn the stove off, and what will happen is the steam will dry out the potatoes. And if a couple break apart, that doesn't matter. Now with the carrots, I strain them as well, and they're lovely and tender, and that's how you want them. Then I put the pot back on the heat, and it's probably better to do this in a fry pan, but to be honest, I can't be bothered dirtying another pan, so I just do it in the same pan I cook them in. And then to the pan I add a good knob of butter, a good squeeze of honey, and then the carrots, and just stir them around and cook them for a couple more minutes until they're all glazed with the honey and the butter. I live by the 80-20 rule. 80% good, 20% a little bit naughty. And the 80% is the carrots and the 20% is the butter and the honey. But they sure do taste yum. One other thing, just a tiny little wincy bit of salt, which helps bring out the flavours. And when they're lovely and glazed, I just turn off the heat, put on the lid and keep them warm. So with the potatoes, they've thoroughly been draining, and I'm just going to put on the lid and keep them warm. And you could throw a little bit of butter over them if you please. But we've got a lot of that lovely gravy coming up shortly. Golly, these Aldi pots are so heavy. So that has been in the oven for an hour and a half, 90 minutes. Oh, it's looking beautiful. So if I take a skewer, there should be no resistance, and there isn't. And look at that lovely gravy. So what to do now is to take the steaks out pieces of meat and put them in another pan. And if your gravy is too thick, you can add a little bit of water. It shouldn't be super thick, but I don't mind it on the thicker side. And just give it a stir to stir all that fond in the bottom around. And I'm just going to add just a little bit of hot water, boiling water, because it was a little bit too thick. Now is the time to taste it and make any adjustments, any seasoning adjustments. It tastes lovely. The only thing it might need is a little bit of pepper. And just one more thing. This is my thing because I think it just takes that, I don't know, bitterness out of the steak, is just 1 teaspoon of sugar. And I stir that well until that's all dissolved. And that is a beautiful silky gravy. But what I do now is, Mike, I need your hand, love.
That's the gravy.
No, it's beautiful strain, Mike. Trust me.
I know I have to.
Okay, thank you, love. And then you can get out now. Thank you.
Outside?
No. And then just push all that through a fine mesh strainer onto the meat. And what you'll be left with is the bay leaf and the stalks of the parsley and the thyme. And take every little bit of goodness out of that. And that is a silky smooth, beautiful gravy. So, not necessary, but I'm going to transfer this to my nice serving dish so I can hopefully get a nice thumbnail. And Mike is going to help me here because he's dying to eat it. That's beautiful gravy. Excellent. And the last thing to do is sprinkle on some chopped fresh parsley. Not necessary, but it does add that lovely little bit of freshness. Bit of beef, a couple of potatoes, a few honeyed carrots, some green peas, and some gravy. And that is beautiful braised beef. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. I got this method from my son-in-law's professional cookery book that he received during the last year of his apprenticeship as a chef, and I've been using it ever since, and it always gets rave reviews when I make it at work. It's just one of those comforting, delicious home-style goodness meals.